Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to US Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Show your support by visiting US Modernist's massive mid-century modern archives at USModernist.org. Looking for a modern house that's a little bigger? Today we welcome Los Angeles architect Paul McClean, the man behind some of the world's largest modernist houses, as well as special musical guest Rebecca and the High Tones. And now, the guy known as Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thank you, Tom. I'm George Smart, and I am very interested in talking with today's guest, because if you want to design an ultra-cool house with every imaginable feature and piece of technology, this is the guy. We'll get to him in just a second. Support for US Modernist Radio comes from Realtor Angela Roll. In a classic tale that we are largely making up, Realtor Angela Roll trained with the Navy SEALs, the first woman to complete their grueling program. On a mission to England, she infiltrated a royal wedding, but after accidentally spilling a bottle of Chateau Margaux 1787 on someone's mother, who had a crown, her military record became classified and she was burn noticed to Prague in the Czech Republic. Broke, with only a 9mm Ruger, a circular saw, and a red ball gown to her name, she studied architecture by day and built portable dance floors by night. It was on one of her dance floors at the Finnish embassy that she waltzed into the arms of international man of mystery Eric of Helsinki, who she later married. On their honeymoon aboard the Queen Mary II, she performed the Heimlich maneuver on Frank Gehry, the resulting projectile inspiring a series of artworks by Millie Brown. Angela narrowly got her circular saw past customs in New York via her cloak of invisibility, because all heroines have one, of course, to become your formidable real estate agent with architecture training, capable of brilliant advice to buyers and sellers of modernist houses. Angela Roll is your special agent. Reach her at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL or 919-995-0550. Our guest today is Paul McClean. He grew up in, is it Coolock?
Correct. Hello, George. How are you?
Good. Coolock, North County, Dublin, Ireland. Graduated from the Dublin Institute of Technology. What was their mascot, Paul?
We didn't have a mascot, unfortunately. We were deprived
robot
that
leprechaun?
It's anything.
Afraid not. No leprechauns. They're mainly an American thing.
That's right. We make all that stuff up, Tom. Don't you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yes. The Lucky
Sure.
Charms.
Part of our colonialism.
That's right.
He graduated from the DIT in 1994 and worked for several firms. But by 2000, he was on his own, working out of his garage. It's one of those good garage to riches success stories. Over the next 18 years, McClean Design has grown into one of the leading modern residential design firms in Los Angeles. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, George. I'm very happy to be here.
When you were growing up in Ireland, what architects inspired you? This would have been in the 80s?
Late 70s, early 80s, yeah. So back then, I didn't know much about architecture, but I always wanted to be an architect. Started out when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I used to like to draw houses. I used to get in trouble in school for drawing houses. That's all I ever really drew. And always been about houses for me. So when I go to the local library, there would be books there mainly on Frank Lloyd Wright and Le Corbusier and some of the more well-known modernists of the 20th century. But the first person that really caught my attention was Frank Lloyd Wright. And later on, when I got a little bit older and could get better access to information pre-internet, it would have been Richard Neutra and later Frank Gehry and a lot of the Los Angeles area modernists.
Were there particular houses of theirs that really captured you?
Well, when I started out, like when I was, say, 9 or 10 years old, there wasn't much information I could find. But the first thing I saw was Falling Water, by Frank Lloyd Wright, and that at that stage perplexed me. I didn't know what to think of it. I couldn't imagine it as a house, and that really got my mind going, and took it from there. The Richard Neutra house out in the desert in Palm Springs was a huge inspiration for me.
The Kaufman House?
In my late teens. The Kaufman House, yeah. And some of his other work in L.A., that really inspired me, and some of the case study houses as well.
Are there any well-known Irish modernists?
There are a couple. There are some well-known firms today, but when I was growing up, probably the most famous was Scott Talon Walker, who were doing modernist buildings in and around Dublin in the 50s and 60s and so on. And probably their most famous work is the bus station, which was right behind a customs house in the middle of town. That's something I would have passed every day as I was growing up and going in and out of the city. And it was a very classically 1950s style modernist building, really pretty, and I think it probably is listed today.
When you guys started out in Los Angeles, people need to know that it's not easy to start your own practice, your own firm in architecture. It's particularly not easy if you're specializing in houses. How did you get going?
Well, when I first came to California, I started in Laguna Beach, and I worked there for a couple of different architectural firms, all of which specialized in homes. So I started there, and I had to do public presentations in front of design review boards. So that got me a little bit of exposure out into the public. So, and I always feel like California is a wonderful place to try and set up a firm. People are very open to new ideas, and there's a phenomenal history of contemporary architecture here. So when I decided to go out my own, it was because it was a good story. There was a young couple, and they came to me, and they had bought a lot, and there were plans on the lot for a very traditional home. And as we talked about it, and they described what they wanted, I told them that really there wasn't much point in building that house. It wasn't going to work for what they wanted. So they went away and talked about it, and came back a few months later. Actually came back on New Year's Day, 2000, and said it was a new millennium, and they wanted to do a new type of house, and I got my first job. So I started that in the evenings while I still had a day job, and a few months later picked up a little bit more work and went out on my own.
So like Frank Lloyd Wright, you did a little moonlighting.
Exactly. There's been a lot of work since then, but yes, that's probably the best way for people to start. I think it's usually people start with smaller projects, and in the beginning we would have done things like kitchen extensions, small remodels, but we were fortunate in our timing that when I started in 2000, we had a good long run up probably till 2008, where the economy was good, and we were able to pick up clients and keep building our business and keep designing homes.
Well, let's fast forward to today, because one of the things that I heard about you and your firm is that you've been involved with a modernist house. It's been given a lot of names. I think one of the nicest here is Giga Mansion in Bel Air. That is a contender.
That's
not
one
only
of the nicer ones.
Yes. It is a contender for one of the most expensive homes on the planet, but also one of the largest. I've read that the asking price is $500 million. Is that about right?
Billion?
500 million?
Billion would it be? Yes, that's what I've heard too. But I'm not really very aware of where all that is right now. We're trying to finish the house. It's been a labor of love for over 5 years now, and I think we only have about 6 or 7 months to go. But it's definitely one of the biggest homes in North America, and will most likely be one of the most expensive when it's sold.
And this house is on spec, right? There's no client that's ready to move in.
No client. Right, and that's something we do a reasonable amount of. Over the last 10, 15 years, I would say at least a third of our projects have been speculative in nature, and that does make them a little bit unique because you really don't have a client, so you have to imagine your client to some degree and try and design it in such a way that it will appeal to a potential buyer, but also a reasonable amount of potential buyers who can afford it. So we try and find ways to emotionally connect people to it, that once they walk in there, there's something that wows them and makes them feel like they want to be there, want to live there, and hopefully encourages them to buy it. So this was a particular challenge.
Well, I'm already emotionally invested in your work, Paul. But how are you going to find people with $500 million of walking around money to do this? I mean, that's a very
that's not
special.
my job to find them. But there's a few of them, I'm sure, out there. But there'll be real estate agents and the developer who will concentrate on that. And our job is to try and make the house as successful and beautiful as possible.
Well, at this scale, would it not be reasonable to say that whoever moves in, it's going to be an iconic house immediately?
I would hope it will be. I mean, the sheer scale of it makes it stand out, and it's unique also in the fact that I don't think that it will be possible to build many more homes of this scale in Greater Los Angeles. Many of the rules have changed in the last few years, and there's been a lot of discussion and also new restrictions. People are worried about the size of homes in general and how they've been growing. And often these things come from not necessarily from a house like this, but from other projects where people are seeing like suburban lots where homes were traditionally 1,500, 2,000 square feet, morphing into 5,000 square foot homes, and character of neighborhoods changing. So that has developed a whole series of rules which are going to limit the ability for people to build larger homes. And so I think it will be very unique from that perspective.
So what is large anymore, Paul? I mean, I have a 2,400 square foot home, and I think of large as being like 6,000 or 10,000. But here, large is a whole different scale. I mean, what is large in your book as an architect of these?
Well, I think that it really depends on the client, and we do a whole range of homes. Like the smallest home we're working on is about 1,000 square feet, and the largest is that particular house we've been talking about, which is 100 times that size in terms of its total footprint. So for a typical, family of 4 people, 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house is a pretty large home, and you can get a lot of things into there. But some of these homes are designed more in the tradition of entertaining and to accommodate large groups and for social reasons, and
almost like a private hotel.
Yeah, or if you think back to mansions of the previous centuries and so on, where people, if you're going to entertain 200 people, you need a lot of space. So that's if you're going to do it on a regular basis, and then we have clients who think about that and do that, and so the houses they design include facilities that you wouldn't see in a normal house, such as commercial kitchens and additional entertainment spaces, bars, bowling alleys, dance floors, things like that. So it really depends on the client. I think, for all our clients, we're trying to create a beautiful home that connects to nature and allows you to experience the seasons as they go by, much as they're subtle in this part of the world.
Well, you mentioned a few features. Tell us more about this very large house and what we would see if we strolled through as a guest at a party with 200 people in this house.
Well, we might need a few more to fill this house. It is a very large house, but it is also divided into specific sections. So there is the main part of the home, which is roughly 35,000 square feet, and that includes rooms that you would consider typical: living room, gallery, dining room, family room, kitchen, plus the master bedroom suite and additional bedrooms for potentially family members, and everything on a rather large scale. But below that, there is a much larger space, which is more devoted to entertaining, and that includes wellness spa areas, a gym, a large media room, which is really more of a cinema. It's that large.
How many people are in the media room? How many people can you pack in there?
Oh, you'll put 50 in it easily, at least.
So it's a theater. It's
pretty big.
Yeah.
It's a full-scale theater that would be not out of scale at a local multiplex. So it's large scale.
Is there a concession stand, Paul, that I can get popcorn at?
There's a concession room. There will be no shortage of popcorn or concessions.
Okay.
And one of the more unusual features is a jellyfish lounge where we have 4 tanks, 3 on 3 walls and 1 above your head, and they all connect together so the jellyfish can swim around you, and you can be having somewhat of an immersive experience.
It sounds like the name of a dive bar I might find in Dublin. The Jellyfish Lounge.
Jellyfish Lounge.
Jellyfish Lounge. I'm not sure if that's what we had, but it might have felt like that.
We get the closing time, they start looking more and more like mermaids. You know
more
what
like
I mean?
a jellyfish.
Yeah. Wow. I would think that it's hard to think of a house that big if you lost your car keys or your cell phone. What would
that
you
could
do?
be a problem. But, chances are there's a lot of people to help you in a house that scale because
You're going to have staff, Tom.
Work on its own. You're going to have staff. I mean, that's not going to be possible for someone to live in by themselves and do their own house cleaning and keep up.
Is there staff housing built into this, Paul? I mean, is like there an area like you have on a cruise ship where the crew lives?
Yes, and there often is in these large-scale homes. I mean, people imagine that there will at least be a couple of staff members living with them. So this house has a full staff wing, which includes, bedrooms and living rooms, and it's almost like its own house in itself.
And how many staff can live there at a time?
I think it's about 6 or 7.
Okay, so it's a fairly large space.
It's a pretty large space. There's about 5,000 square feet allocated for that.
How's the view?
Well, that's part of the reason that hopefully someone will buy it. It does have a spectacular view, and it's on the top of a hill, and the lot itself is about 4 acres, so it's a 360-degree view in every direction over greater Los Angeles, including the whole downtown through to the ocean and back into the hills behind.
Wow.
Now, what was there before?
There was a home there before, and it was a rather large home, but it had been abandoned, surprisingly, for several years, and it had fallen into quite a dilapidated state. In fact, I remember standing on the lot and looking at the swimming pool and thinking, you really don't want to get in there. There's all sorts of things growing in there. So, but it didn't take as much advantage of the lot as it was possible to do.
Do you also dig into the hillside to create more underground space?
Yes, and particularly in this house, that's one of the things I think which is attractive, because although there's a lot of program, as I said, it's almost 100,000 square feet of program, much of that is in appearance buried below grade, though there's plenty of light and access, but we do often in many of our homes utilize the space underneath the homes to create additional spaces, but also to minimize the appearance of the house itself.
I watched the movie Iron Man. And, of course, you have Tony Stark's fabulous house, I think, overlooking the Pacific.
I'd like to sell him our house, but I guess we'll have to wait and see, right?
Well, Elon Musk is Iron Man, right? So you can talk
to Yes, he is.
Elon.
I'll go talk to Elon about it.
In Iron Man's house, in Tony Stark's house, which was not a real place but was just a set design, it had a lot of unusual features of technology and also the scale of certain things. For instance, you had a garage, and the garage had hydraulic lifts, I believe, to move the cars up and down and shift things around.
Right.
Does your large house have any really cool supervillain features?
I hope we should have had more supervillain features. I do think so. Next house, I promise. We'll have more supervillain features. I think many of those ideas you do see cropping up in different houses that we're doing, depending on the circumstances. This house has so much space that, things like hydraulic lifts, we didn't have to avail of those. We have enough room for a very large garage and parking bays. But there's a hell of a lot of technology in a house like that. Otherwise, I don't think you'd be able to keep track of it.
It's a 4-acre lot, is that right?
Yes, it's a big lot.
And so
it's a big house.
I'm just thinking about the footprint of the house. Is it much of? Is it
pretty large?
Okay, I'll take that.
Okay. What is some of the technology you mentioned that you would find in this house to keep it all going?
Oh, well, I mean, there's all sorts of systems for air conditioning, humidification. I mean, we have a full wellness spa in there, and, that involves climate control. There's all sorts of security features, media features. You can have music follow you around the house. You can enjoy the same movie on different TVs as you walk through the house, and all sorts of everything, the latest and greatest that you can imagine in terms of lighting and kitchens and bathrooms and so on, everything imaginable.
Now, are there any robots?
There might be. Yeah, maybe those little segways so we can get around and not get tired.
Is there a helipad?
No, unfortunately not. But helicopters are not allowed in Greater Los Angeles on the roofs of private residences. They can only land in airports. or certain downtown buildings. So that was not a possibility.
What about lasers? Do you have any special lasers that shoot out and get the intruders?
No, probably special lasers to keep the intruders off the lot for sure. But I don't think you'll see them. If you guys have any ideas, we'll be happy to incorporate them in the next house.
Well, I just I imagine this with such a house that there would be some kind of really fantastic futuristic system that would pop up that would be like this orbiting sphere that would be following you around
with your drink,
and
your car keys.
I think that's an excellent idea, and with your car keys too, right? So, but I think someone will probably come and take your car keys for you. I'm not really concerned about
that's
car
right.
keys.
That's why you have
the drinks
staff.
are more concerning.
What about parking? I mean, is there parking under the structure or where? I imagine a person who has a 104,000 square foot house and all this staff has got a lot of cars.
Yes, and there's a lot of parking, In fact, there's a very large garage underneath the house so that you can park in excess of 20 cars. And also there's some places for parking particularly expensive cars, like you can show them off and have a look at them. Like cars are becoming works of art in their own sense, and we're finding more and more clients have vehicles that they don't just want to put in a dark garage somewhere. It's something that they want to display like a piece of art. So that's something that's cropping up more and more in some of these ultra-luxurious homes.
What about smaller houses?
Well, like I said, the smallest house we're working on right now is a little mountain cabin. It's 1,000 square feet.
Right, 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, so it's like 1/100th of that house. But, those are really, we do all sorts of projects, but they're all homes. That's what we do. And so it really depends on the client and what the client wants. And it can be just as satisfying and a lot less complicated to design a 1,000 square foot house. But some elements can be more of a challenge because it's easy when you have acres of space to just keep adding things on. But when you've got a little bit of space to work with, you have to really think it through and make sure that it works well and try and get the most out of it.
So I pulled up a little bit of history about that lot, Paul. Years ago, it was the mansion for Dart Drugs, the guy who was chairman of Rexall Drugstores, Dart Drugs. He was a member of Governor Reagan's kitchen cabinet.
Man, that sounds old.
And it was destroyed in the Bel Air fire of 1961. However, the family decided not to move back onto that site. They eventually sold the land, built another mansion for another family, and that's the one that you came across that was
abandoned,
ailing and abandoned.
And George, can you see when that was built or when people last lived there?
I could find out. I don't have it on this particular screen. I'm just pulling up what's in our records from the former home. The Justin Dart edition, Quincy Jones did a house for them on North Faring Road in L.A. in the early 60s. But anyway, let's go back to your career, Paul. I understand that you have the unusual fortune and skill to get your clients to come back again and again and again. I've read that you have a number of real estate investors who've commissioned you to design homes for themselves, plus others. Like one guy he's connected to about 7 houses, right?
No, that's true. Yes, we do. We're very fortunate to have repeat clients, and it's always nice you're working with the same people. You can build off what you previously learned from the previous project and try and improve upon it next time.
Have you gone back and done projects in Ireland?
I wish. I would love to. I haven't had the fortune to do that yet. Hopefully sometime in the future. We do have projects out of California, which is always fun as well, just to be in a different environment and dealing with different challenges. In fact, right now we're finishing up a house in Whistler in British Columbia, and I'm hoping to get to see that next month. It should be finished and ready to move into.
In Ireland, when I visited in Dublin and in Belfast, all people could talk about was Bono and how he was reinvesting all this money and all these investors were piling in to rebuild these areas. Have you thought about talking to Bono for your next gig?
We might have a mutual friend, so I'm sure at some point we'll cross. Our paths will cross at some point, I'm sure.
I mean,
but there has been a lot of regeneration going on in Ireland, and it's been fantastic to see. And it's from when I left, which was '94, it's a transformed place, hardly recognizable.
You've also worked with some pretty interesting clients, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, right?
The Winklevosses bought a house when we had finished it, so we didn't really do much work with them.
Okay, but they bought one you had designed.
As seen in the social network.
As seen in the social network, and also famous for investing in Bitcoin.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that.
They are Bitcoin billionaires.
Did their check clear?
Wow.
So if you need to get paid, Paul, you can just ask it for them.
I can ask them for in Bitcoin. Okay,
in cryptocurrency.
Right.
Have people been okay with houses being this large? Are there a lot of critics of it? Or are they just accepting it as how business goes there in L.A.?
I think people are always mindful, but it's not something that is particularly new. There have always been large homes, and particularly in this part of the world. It's nice that we have the space here to be able to design larger homes and to have the ability to connect to the environment around us. I mean, it's a wonderful landscape, and we have tremendous views. There is just fantastic opportunities due to the climate alone that you can't really take advantage of, even in other parts of the country. We don't really have many bugs in this part of the world, which also makes it possible to open these homes up in ways that wouldn't necessarily work even in other warm parts of the country.
We'll send you a few from North Carolina, you know. You can have some.
You probably have a couple spare. But I think that, over time there always have been bigger homes, and we only have to look back at the gilded mansions of the last, the late 19th century, early 20th century to see some comparisons. Again, it depends what people have in mind for these homes. The master bedroom of the house we've been talking to is pretty large. It's like 5,000 square feet. But I imagine that's where the people who live in the home will spend a lot of their time. I'm not sure that they will spend all their time wandering around the rest of the home. But when you have a lot of people over for entertaining or you have other functions you want to carry out at your home, then that makes sense. I also think there's been growth in the size of homes over the last 20, 30 years, and people are doing a lot more entertainment at home perhaps than they used to do, and now there are functions they want to have in their homes. For example, in-home theaters were something that we saw start to crop up in the mid-90s, and that's become, on these large homes, almost a requirement at this stage.
You've had, as we talked about, a lot of success with developers, and those developers have in turn sold to some well-known people. Beyonce and Jay-Z bought one of the houses you designed. Are you finding now that celebrities are coming to you directly?
We have a whole mixture of clients, but yes, we do have some clients that are celebrities, and I think it's because with the homes that are for sale being on the market, people get to see them, which is often, unfortunately, the case. You don't really get to see many of these homes finished, and many people don't want to publish their homes, so they don't get out there in magazines and in books. So the fact that some of these homes have been on the market have been really helpful for us in terms of building our business.
Have you fallen in with any of the celebrity home flippers where they go in and...
I haven't met any of those yet. But generally our projects are from the ground up, so we're pretty much starting from scratch on a vacant piece of land or taking down an older structure that was there. So I would hope that by the time they're finished, they're ready to move in and enjoy them for a while.
Have you gotten any requests to do renovations on homes by Wright or Neutra or Schindler or some of those others you admired growing up?
We've been looking at one recently, so I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out, and that would be very exciting and a little bit intimidating at the same time. So I really wouldn't want to do something that would screw one of those homes up. But I do know that one of the things we see is that technology obviously has changed a lot, and we can do a lot better glazing systems, for example, now than we used to, which makes these houses much more inhabitable than they previously were. Also, ceiling heights are better today. That's another thing that you would notice in today's homes comparatively. So we can put these homes together in a way that they don't leak, which is also a great advantage over many of these homes you would have seen from the middle of the last century.
Do you ever get noise from the tiny house people? Do they disrespect your stuff?
A little bit, but nothing we can't handle. You know, it's. I think there's homes, different size homes for different people, and some people want larger homes, some people want smaller homes. We've had clients downsizing too, where they want, as their life changes, we've designed new homes for them that are smaller in nature or different in nature maybe than before. Children moving out of the house, and then it's just two people, and they're thinking more about maybe having guest house for guests rather than having them incorporated in a house, and just what's the minimal kind of footprint we can live in without giving up some of the things we really like.
What's the most unusual feature you've had somebody ask you to incorporate into a house?
Probably the jellyfish tank.
Yeah.
Right now. That's probably up there. Probably car lifts are good. You know, that's been the good one over the years. Car lifts taking you to garages where you can spin the cars around and, potentially have a disco down there.
Like Batman, yeah.
That's probably it.
You know, those aquariums, they're on some cable TV show. Specialty aquarium guys that run around the country installing those.
Yeah,
well, there's a fantastic jellyfish aquarium at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, I think.
Yes, there is. It's very inspirational. I've seen that one myself. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So where do you, I guess you're not responsible for this, Paul, but where do you go to stock up your jellyfish tank?
I guess I go to the tank guys on TV or someone like it and have them stack it up. Or maybe we'll just go talk to the people at the Monterey Bay Aquarium.
Yeah. Oh, they're missing a few. I wonder where they are.
So where do their jellyfish go?
Paul, with your ability to work at this scale and in modernist style, have you ever been asked to do any movie design projects or for homes or structures that will be done for film or TV?
It's interesting, but mainly that works through location scouting. So there's a whole sub-industry here of set designers that deal with just that particular problem. And what you'll find is that they find a home that they like, they use it for the movie, and then they build a set which has elements of that home in it. So it's not something that we've had much personal experience with. We have done some renovations, though, and we did a renovation recently of a 1903 house in Pacific Heights in San Francisco. And that was a fantastic project that I really enjoyed because it was a beautiful structure, obviously well over 100 years old, vertical, and we were able to retrofit it. Most of the interior, unfortunately, had been destroyed over the years, but we were able to turn that to our advantage and give it a really contemporary interior, and then retrofit it, put a garage underneath it, and set it on its way for another 100 years. So that's something I'm particularly proud of, that we were able to be involved in that project.
Well, Paul, I got to think that with this 104,000 square foot house, that some movie producer is going to want to shoot something there pretty soon once after it's finished. I mean, you can't have something like that in L.A. and no one wants to film there. Is that a consideration in design? Like, does your client know that there are going to be camera crews there? I mean, even just for the parties, to film parties and film events or commercials, does that ever work into it?
Well, I think we're always, like I said a little earlier, trying to find a way to get people emotionally attached to these homes.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody really needs a home this big or even half that size. But when you do a house that's for sale, part of the goal is to give it some feeling, some type of vibe that makes people just want to be there, want to imagine their life there. So there is a cinematic element to all these homes.
Oh,
I think we're hoping to make something that has a certain style, a certain panache, and it should photograph well on top of that. So all that would work towards something like that as well, I think.
What is your website, Paul, where people can see all this amazing architecture?
Oh, McCleanDesign.com.
And spell it for them.
My name. McCleanDesign.com.
Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. It's really been a pleasure to have you on the show, and I so much appreciate it.
It's been lovely to be with you guys. Good luck over there with the bugs.
Oh, thank you.
It is a very special privilege to have one of my favorite groups from this area of the Research Triangle in North Carolina, musical guests Rebecca and the High-Tones, singing Straighten Up and Fly Right, a 1943 tune from the heyday of modernist architecture, written by Nat King Cole and Irving Mills.
1, 2, 3, 4. Ba-da, ba-da, ya-da, ba-da, ya-da, ba-ba-ba-ba-da, ba-da-ba-da-ba. A buzzer took took a monkey for a ride in the air. The monkey thought that everything was on the square. The buzzard tried to throw the monkey off of his back, but the monkey grabbed his neck and said, "Now, listen, Jack. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and stay tight. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. What's the use in jiving? Ain't no use in diving. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. The buzzard told the monkey, you were choking me. Release your hold and I will set you free. The monkey looked the buzzard right dead in the eye and said, your story's so touching, sounds just like a lie. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and stay tight. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Breed-oo, breed up. Breed-oo, breed up. Breed-oo, breed up. Ba-da. All right, Keith, take a little break. Choking me, release your hold and I will set you free. The monkey looked the buzzard right dead in the eye and said, story's so touching, it sounds just like a lie. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and stay tight. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Oh, straighten up and fly right. Oh, straighten up. Straighten up and stay tight. Yeah, straighten up. Straighten up and fly right. Here we go. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Ba-da.
That was really great.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Rebecca Newton has been entertaining audiences for over 25 years with her distinctive voice as lead singer of Rebecca and the High Tones. And by day, she's CEO of the Carolina Theater in downtown Durham. Yeah. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having us and having me.
Keith Guile co-founded the High Tones with Rebecca. He grew up in New York and followed his love of Doc Watson to move to North Carolina, where he eventually opened for Doc twice. Tell us how the High Tones got started.
We met at a party.
Yeah, we did.
My ex-wife was good friends with Rebecca, and she took me to a party. She was pregnant, and she couldn't. She dropped me off, hooked me up with Rebecca, and she and I just hatched a plot that night.
Yeah, we did. Wow. I was running St. Joe's, right. Which is now the Haytide Heritage Cultural Center or something. And it was called St. Joseph's Performing Arts Center back then, 1980. And so then we met, and then we opened for the new Grass Revival show. And which was, a couple shows. Yeah, they were amazing. Yeah. And then we just started the High Tones, I guess, about 82 or something like that. So. I was married to Bill Newton for 30 years, and he was in the band, and a guy named Robert Truesdale, a lot of high school people. Robert Truesdale, I went to high school with him. He was bass player, and I'd been in a bluegrass band with him in the 70s called Mother Country, and with Bill. And then Michael Borselman, who is a mandolin player, and I went to high school with briefly in 1972. And then Lynn Jaffe was the first female vocalist with me. I mean, what do you call it? I don't know. I don't want to call her a backup singer because she wasn't. She did a lot of her
We
own
had the
stuff,
three
but-
chicks. And
Yeah,
you could say that.
eventually,
You could say
yeah.
that back then, but
Yeah,
we
we-
don't talk that way now.
3 women. But so we grew to an 8-piece band, and we started in 82, and I haven't really played much in the last 5 or 6 years, but had a good long run, got to say that.
Did you guys cut an album?
Several,
Yeah,
I
we
guess.
did 3 with the high tones.
Yeah. And then we've done our own things, and I'm right in the middle of my own thing right now.
And we got one of the coolest things we got to do as a band is we played Montreux off.
Yeah, the Montreux Jazz Festival.
Over the Jazz Festival in Switzerland.
Wow.
That was awesome. Yeah,
That was an amazing
It wasn't so
experience.
awesome taking 7 people overseas, but the rest of it was great. And it was also the summer that it was 110 or something.
Yeah, it was a record
There were all these
heat.
everybody was dying in Paris and stuff. We were dying in Geneva or Montreux, I guess. And but we met Steve Lucky and the Rumba Bumbas.
Yeah, Steve Lucky and the Rumba Bums.
Something like that, yeah. And we were on this boat going around Lake Geneva.
Carmen Geddet was
Carmen Geddet.
She was the lead singer.
And Steve Lucky. And they were on the floor above us, and we were on the floor. And so we would alternate. It was really fun.
It was fun.
It was beautiful.
We did the sunset. Did a sunset concert on shore that started at 10:45.
Oh, I didn't remember that. Yeah, we had a nice crowd, and it was a beautiful. Even though it was 1,000,000 degrees, it was beautiful. Switzerland was beautiful, and there was that big Freddie Mercury. There was that great big Freddie Mercury statue right in the middle of Montreux. So apparently, he gave a lot of money to Montreux, so they gave him a giant statue of himself.
We've had numerous adventures through the years.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming by here, Rebecca and Keith.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. US Modernist Radio is underwritten by Angela Roll, your special agent for Modernist Houses, 919-995-0550. Visit usmodernist.org to listen to past shows and discover our massive mid-century modernist archives. US Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Cindy Stratton, or at least that's who she says she is, researches our guest from a secret underground bunker very close to the Whole Foods. US Modernist Radio is a production of Triangle Modernist Archive, a nonprofit educational organization for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild, and although our beloved Kate Wagner just gets the vapors and has to lie on her fainting couch
Oh, my Lord.
every time we say it, George and Frank and I will be back in 2 weeks with another 104,000 square foot edition, bless my heart, of US Modernist Radio.